And yeah, that's what people at home are hearing and what gets later played on the link. So try to have this closer. We all sound muffled. That's it.
Thank you. Next up, reports and discussions. First item on the agenda is the website. Ms. Birchfield.
Jim Birchfield, the Interim Director of Instructional Technology.
Joy Shoreham, website manager.
Manager, consultant.
Okay, we'd like to just present a short discussion on the migration to a new web hosting service. We've currently decided that the hosting service that we use is not really appropriate because it's very, very expensive for the district, and it doesn't behave the way we would like it to behave in terms of responsiveness and the way the website functions for the end users. So we'd just like to go over the proposed change that we would like to make and the vendor that we would like to use.
We've talked a lot in the beginning about what the goal of the website is, and we came up with the general concept that the website for the school district should be an effective communication tool that we can use for parents, students, staff, community. We want to share details about the district, the schools, the curriculum, events that are happening, and anything anybody would want to learn about the schools in our district in a really user-friendly and accessible manner.
Okay, so the current provider is Finalsite, and we're paying approximately $17,500 per year for the hosting service. And we feel that that's exorbitant. There's just really no need to be paying that much money for a web hosting service at this point. And the amount of service that we get with that price really just doesn't meet our standards. These are some of the challenges we face with Finalsite. It's, like I said, very expensive, $17,500 a year. Any kind of add-ons or customization that we like to do with the site is always an extra charge, and that's never something that we like to see. The contract is, we think it's ridiculously long, 5 years. That's very unusual. It should be a yearly contract, or maybe at the most 3 years, but 5 years is really not acceptable. And the contracts are a little bit slippery in a sense where they kind of automatically renew you unless you really act on it and say, no, we do not want, or we have to give them enough notice to get out, otherwise they'll just automatically renew it and lock us in for another 5 years. So we'd like to avoid that. The design is non-responsive, and that really means that in this day and age, any device that you use to view a website should change to the device. So you should be able to view the website on any device, on a smartphone, a tablet, a computer. It really shouldn't matter what device you use it on. So a responsive site will adjust itself to any device. So device agnostic is a term that gets thrown around. And the Finalsite is not a responsive design. So in other words, if you open it up on your smartphone, it just doesn't behave. It just looks like it's all squished down there. It's really tiny. You have to work really hard to find anything. So we don't like the fact that it's non-responsive. And it's very difficult for the users to manage the content. So anybody who's adding content to the website, it's just not very user-friendly. And we don't like that. Either it makes it more difficult for people to add content, and then when it's difficult, they tend not to do it. So it's just not the kind of situation we want. We want something that's user-friendly for people managing the content, and also user-friendly for the end users who are viewing the content. The contract that we have currently ends on June 30th. So we have between now and June 30th to do migration to a new service, and we did look at some alternatives. These are just three of the ones that kind of bubbled up to the top at the end after we started our search back in May. And Blackboard, virtual towns and schools, and the idea of using an independent design firm, we looked at that as well. And we decided that going with the independent design firm was not the right way to go, even though you can get a very nice looking site. It could be potentially labor intensive on our end as content managers. So we just decided not to go that route. And virtual towns and schools, which is another popular platform for schools. We looked at that and just decided that the look and feel of the templates and the designs that they were offering, they weren't really up to snuff. I don't know how else to put it, but they don't look contemporary enough. Looks a little dated. So we decided that we didn't want to go with that solution. And we ended up deciding that Blackboard offered the best overall solution. And they have a bundled package that's called the Community Engagement Solution. And what it really means is, and I don't know if there's a little video that goes with this. Did you all have a chance to take a look at that? I don't want to spend any extra time viewing it now unless you really want to see it. It's about a 3-minute video. Well, you can watch that on your own. Okay, let's get that one. So this is it in like a nutshell. Here's a bulleted list of what was in that little video that we just didn't watch. It's a complete content management system, and it consists of a custom app, which is called Parent Link, a responsive website, which is known as School Wires, and notification system, which we currently have. We use Connect right now, and that's something that we've been using for a while. And that's our notification system, so whenever you get a message on the phone or an emergency notification, it goes out through Connect. And we like the idea that Connect was something that we're using already, and it integrates seamlessly with the rest of the content management system. And that was a big bonus. And they did, I did ask the rep if, since we're already using that and paying somewhere, I think we pay about $5,000, I want to say $5,300 or $5,500 a year just for Connect alone. And I said, well, can you give us a break? Since we're already using that, if we get a bundled package, can you give us a deal? And she said yes. And I thought she gave us a really great deal. So Connect is part of that, and then Sociability is their social media manager. And that's essentially, it kind of corrals all of the social media that's connected to the district and allows a manager to kind of see all of the social media posts that are going on and keep a kind of a watch on that and possibly catch content that shouldn't go out there. So it's a nice way to see what's happening with the social media. So that's really those four things are all bundled together in the package. So it's nice to have that kind of integration. And there's an example district site here. Real quick. So this is just a sample site that from SchoolWire, like a SchoolWire site that Blackboard, a template that Blackboard provides, and it's just an example of kind of a look and feel that one of the websites might have. I'm not saying this is the one we would use. It's just an example of another town or another district that's using Blackboard. If you had any comments about what you like about the design or the templates.
Yes, there's a number of different things that we wanted to achieve, and this achieves a lot of them in terms of making calendar information more visible, being able to use photos and videos more readily. All of this is customizable, so the menu items at the top are customizable. We can make them say whatever we want them to say. It gives us a lot of flexibility, same with the icons that were on the side. It just gives us the opportunity to really make it fit what our users are looking for. And we did actually do a survey last year of everybody in the district, parents, staff, students. And so we have a pretty good idea of the kinds of things that people are going to the website looking for, and that's helping to guide us in deciding what the priorities are.
So anyway, I don't want to spend much time looking at the website, but yeah, the links to that, and you can take a look at it at your leisure. And you also have a price quote that was sent to, I believe, an email. And I'm just going to kind of give you the quick breakdown on the price comparison. We're currently paying $17,500, that's a yearly fee. And the proposed Blackboard yearly fee is $9,900. Now that includes the current Connect fee that we're paying at $5,500. So when you look at it that way, if you could say that the other bundled services that we're getting in addition to Connect it's $4,600 more. So in my mind, yeah, that's a really nice deal. So we're saving $7,600 a year total for a much more robust communications package.
Jim?
Yeah.
So if I understand that we're paying, excuse me, we're paying $17,500 for our current website and hosting and things, but we're also paying $5,500 for Connect, right?
Right, yeah, so that, the numbers actually.
A lot better.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's
It actually is more, we're probably saving quite a bit more than.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it depends on how you look at it. That 5,500 is, yeah, it's bundled into the 99. So, yeah, so we're saving quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's really a much, much better deal. And these are some of the advantages with Blackboard. Obviously less expensive, premium features that are included in pricing, one-year contract, the design is responsive, more user-friendly content management, and will be live by July 2017. The idea is to begin the migration January 1st if possible. That's our goal. These are the next steps. So yeah, just choose a design template. They have quite a few templates to choose from. So we're going to try and pull together a small focus group to take a look at the potential designs that we could go with and try and get feedback from different stakeholders and get that before we decide on a final template. And then we need to finish cleaning up the backside of Final Site, which really, all that really means is there's a lot of files that are just in the web service, in the web server that aren't necessary anymore. They're just files that were put in there. Some of them go back to like Harwich High School and before that just aren't necessary, but they're kind of clogging up the backside there. Do you want to speak to that?
Yes, my understanding is when districts regionalized, basically the Chatham Schools website and the Harvard Schools website were smushed together without a whole lot of weeding through of anything that's on the back end. So there's a ton of files that are just kind of sitting there on the server, and we don't want to pay to have those migrated over and organized by the new provider, so we have to take some time now to kind of go through those, make sure they're not live links that are still needed, make sure they're not documents that anyone needs, and delete those or reorganize those to get it ready to make a really smooth transition.
So that's basically it. We just wanted to give you a quick overview, and that's what we'd like to be doing. Go with Blackboard.
Any questions, comments? Ms. Ryder?
I sent some questions earlier today.
Yes.
Did you receive those?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you look at Final Site as a possibility with a winter contract with a responsive website? Because they offer that as well.
No, we didn't look at that one.
What about Rediker software? They did have on Ready Site.
We used Rediker in the past, and we decided that we didn't like using them as a vendor because everything is proprietary with them. They had the same problem where any extras that you wanted to add on, they would charge an outrageous amount. They were with difficult to work with. We used them for an SIS years ago in Harwich, and didn't have the greatest experience with them. So nobody that I talked to in the circles that I kind of communicate with for tech directors, nobody's using that. So we just sort of eliminated some of those because of those reasons.
Actually, when I did a search, that's one of the ones I found that schools were using. That's why I asked.
Which schools?
One of the ones around Boston, I forget. I just randomly picked schools.
Yeah. And none of the directors that I communicate with have used that, so I'm not really sure.
Okay.
I tend to kind of go with recommendations by other people that have used services.
I was just going to point out that we did, before Jim stepped in as the tech director, had looked at Final Site as a continuing, along with Final Site. The challenges there are to move from where we are, and they have developed more premium-based websites, but there's a premium to go to the premium websites that would be above and beyond what we're currently paying each year. Plus, we'd still have those design and migration costs to get to the premium site, whereas I think the quote that Jim has, Blackboard has sort of lesser frills websites, and we're actually looking at sort of their premium templates in the Blackboard realm.
And we did really feel that the ability to integrate with the ConnectEd system that the district is currently using with, to my understanding, no complaints, no concerns, everybody's comfortable using it, and the fact that we can integrate that seamlessly was a big benefit to us.
Did you look at School Messenger also?
That one, I looked at that at the very beginning, but I just didn't follow up on it because I couldn't find anybody that was using it that I knew. Is there a reason that?
I just happened to take 10 minutes and do a Google search on several schools, and those are some that came up more than once.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you could find lots of them by doing some searches, but I tried to, again, go with ones that I could talk to people that have been using the services, that have used their support, know the reps. It really helps to have that kind of support network and being able to get recommendations from other people that are using the services. And Blackboard is just everybody who's been using it that I've talked to. And there was a nice discussion today with the South Coast tech directors about moving to new website hosts, and Blackboard was kind of over and over in the discussion. Nantucket just finished doing the same package that we've got. And Newton has been using them. They use them. I'm not sure when they started. It could have been last year or the year before. The director there was highly recommending them. So I've got enough people that I trust and are really, real veterans in the tech director world, saying that Blackboard is really a solid company, and the value that we're getting for the money, I think, is really, really very good. And pricing that they're giving us now is, I think that's not going to last. I think they're using, they're giving us this pricing to help promote this new bundle package that they're doing. And I think we're just getting a good deal because we're early in. And that's my take on it.
Just to be clear, the other schools that I looked at were all Massachusetts schools in the Boston or South Shore area. I didn't look countrywide, so these are local. These are Massachusetts schools.
Yeah, that's
I didn't see anything about what is included in the yearly support exactly.
Support, it's included with the annuals. Gives us the ability to have direct admins call in and get help. And we get after-hours support should something happen in an emergency. And if we want to pay another $850 a year, we can get a dedicated tech support contact. So that's the premium support. So we basically would have one person that we could go to no matter what.
So are there caps on the amount of time or calls that can be made? I'm just asking because these are pitfalls that I've seen, with
I would have to go back to you on that.
Okay. It's great when they offer this great package and it's going to look, wonderful and so forth, but then you have the support and you just get kind of like, It's just a pitfall that I've seen. So
That's a really good question.
it's important to know that if they have caps on it or not, especially when you go onto a new website in first year and a half, there are lots of questions. Things come up, issues come up, things fall through the cracks in the migration. Let's hope not, but they do. So, I'm concerned that there are some caps on that support, and it probably would be good to just check on that. Did they give any indication on their subsequent years, what the renewal price would be and what we included? Because again, it's a nice introductory price, but then what?
I believe this one's locked in for 3 years.
This price?
Yes, the 9,900 per year.
Okay, just one further question, and I have sent most of these earlier in an email, but the mass notifications that you have there, how is that different from Blackboard Connect? Are that listed as part of the package on the detail portal?
I'm sorry, say that one again?
Blackboard mass notifications.
Yeah, that's the same thing as Connect.
Okay.
Yeah,
They just use different.
I don't know why they changed, like, they're changing some of the names as they're creating a new package.
I wondered about that, but there's also another, I guess, it's a not included item that says Connect 5. So what?
Yeah, that's they call what we're using now Connect 5. A lot of people in the district call it Connect Ed, but it's really Connect 5. And on the quote, since the actual contract wouldn't start until July 1st, we have between now and then where we're still using Connect 5. We have been doing the migration, we're still using Connect 5 until July 1st, and then it becomes bundled as part of the package that we're getting. So it's in there, and we're still paying for it while we're using it until we go live with the website. It's really kind of simple, but I'm just not explaining it very well.
So the Blackboard Connect 5 is actually just a change in terminology as of July 1st, and then it would be called Blackboard Mass Notifications. Is that what you're saying?
In their system, I mean, I'm sure we'll still keep calling it Connect Ed.
Yeah, no, just.
Yeah, that's correct, exactly.
Are there any clauses in the contract if they actually do not complete the migration by July 1st, 2017?
I'd have to look into that.
That would be good. Thank you.
Said that there's a oral renewal. Is it a 9-year, 120-day non-renewal clause that you have to notify them by then?
On Blackboard, if we decide not to renew.
No, on final side.
Yeah, I believe we have to notify them within, I want to say 90 days, but.
I notified them 2 years ago.
Do it again.
Their notification time was a lot longer. It was like 6 months or 12 months or something. We had a letter in our packet a ways back, maybe a year ago, or 6 or 8 months, something, but they've already been notified, right? Is that right?
Yes.
Jim?
That sounds right, yeah. We'll double check on that, make sure.
Anything else?
Yes, we have
You-
confirmation they have.
I don't have any background on this, but I'm just wondering about about the stuff that you want to eliminate. Is there a way to keep that somewhere else? Like at home, I put things on one of those little drives, but just for historical reasons, we might ever want to look back at them.
Well, theoretically, they should be somewhere else because you upload them to the website server from a hard drive. So these all existed on district computers at some point. So this theoretically should not be the only place some of these things live. And it's not the type of file server where you would archive things. You wouldn't put something there because you wanted to save it historically. You just have to upload it there to enable you to post it on the website, if that makes sense. So,
All the computers are gone after a while, and they usually, I think, are wiped clean because this confidential information is right.
I mean, again, that's really something that's not in the scope of this project. So these are things like high school newsletters from 2012. And if no one higher in the food chain than me saved that somewhere. You know, there's some things that you just kind of have to let go.
I guess so.
Again, I mean, hopefully someone somewhere at the district saved that, it's archived somewhere, printed copy somewhere, but it's not really within the scope of this project to make sure all of those documents are historically archived elsewhere.
So I appreciate the clarity. And along the line of the clarity, when these things are being migrated, will anything be noticeable for users?
No, it's all going to happen, no one will have any idea what's happening until the day we go live. And that's when users will see the difference. And you know, the thinking is that we do a good job sharing that with the users and promoting it and saying that there's going to be a new website and we'll launch it and make it a big splash. And prior to that, it will have been fully tested and we'll have run all kinds of tests to make sure links are live and everything works. And that will all be happening behind the scenes before any outside users see it.
That's wonderful, better you than me.
So none of those graphics that say under construction in
Let's
between.
hope not, no, we're trying to move it, for sure.
Ms. Richardson?
This is just a quick question, and it's not that technical, but does the focus group that you mentioned need to be in place before the migration begins, or can that migration start without a
Well,
focus
we've
group?
been doing some of the behind-the-scenes work already in terms of cleaning out files and talking to Blackboard about things that they need from us. And we're hoping to get the focus groups done actually in the next couple of weeks, because we really want to have not just the variety, there's different styles of templates that you can choose, and then within that you can customize it further. So we want to be able to decide on which style of template we want to use and decide on the customization. You know, do we want tabs that have each school's name? Do we, different specific things like that? And we want to have all of that ideally nailed down within the next month or so then we can begin the migration process. So we're working to do a couple different focus groups, some with staff, right?
Yeah.
And then
That
some
was my next
parents.
question.
Yeah, we're doing two different, because they have, the different users have different goals, so we're going to do sort of a staff one and parents, and figure out exactly how they want to use the website and how they want to receive that information that we're putting out there. And then we can really decide on exactly what the template layout is.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I just had one question, or maybe two. The template you choose, does that change or affect the timeline of deliverables for your July 1st deadline? And my second question was, did you guys at the timeline of July 1st, or did a rep from Blackboard look at your content and determine that it would take us this amount of time for the deliverables that you need?
Well, part of it was factored because of the expiration of the contract with Final Site, which that's when that expires. So what we actually did is we talked to the Blackboard team and we said this is when the contract's expiring, and they worked backwards and said in order to have it done, then let's start these dates here. So they back calculated it in terms of when our goal was to have it done, when that.
So they can guarantee that all the deliverables you're promising you under that quote will be done by July 1st, and they're not going to run over that and then charge us extra? Because they've come across something they weren't expecting, or?
No, I think if anything, the onus is on us. I think the greater challenge will be us making sure we have everything when they need it from us. And not them having a problem.
Yeah, I think my advice would just to make sure that the content and deliverables that you are signing a contract for are very clear, to make sure that you get everything that you're asking for.
Mr. Russell?
Thanks, Brian. Great info. I haven't decided which half of the presentation I understood, but let a suggestion. Beyond this focus group of parents and staff, would there be a way as you go along to, just like Mr. Case, there's a couple of gurus next door here dealing with 9th grade or 10th grade sophomore type kids who would take to this and become our in-house technicians? Would it be possible to include 2 or 3 kids who could be trained and be present for
I
this?
think that's something we can look at a little further down the road when we get to the training phase. I know we had the opportunity to have a number of individuals involved in the training provided by Blackboard. So I think that's definitely something to consider.
Anybody else? I know that when I have gone to the existing website, one of the issues I always have is I'm usually going there looking for something, and you have to decide which drop-down menu it's most likely to be on. So I've always found it to be not very user-friendly in that sense. So, you know, in this day and age where if you go to Google and you start typing a question, it finishes the question before you. You know, I'm really hoping that this site will have a search engine similar to Google that, you know, I can misspell half the words and still be able to find what I'm looking for.
Yeah, it would be, and I
Likely
know
to do.
it was on the sample site, I believe, that Jim showed, up in the right-hand corner. Yep, the little.
But this is also their opportunity to improve the navigation, which
Yes.
is what George was already talking about.
Right, and part of that is, again, it was the two websites that just got smushed together with not a lot of, you know, planning and thought. And by doing this, at this point, we can be very clear on the different categories we're using, how we're organizing the content, what the most logical way to put that is. And there are technical things offered by this site that will allow that to be a lot more seamless. In our current site, it's just a little too clunky to do that in a seamless way, so you kind of have to put things in multiple locations, because it's not easy to make that unnoticeable to the end user. So that will ideally be improved for this as well.
I'm looking forward to that. You mentioned that it'll be a lot more smartphone friendly. As we all know, you know, people aren't even looking at their laptops anymore.
Yeah, you won't have to do the little.
Right.
I attended that conference recently, and the developer of the app for Blackboard that we're going to be using presented. It was very interesting. They did quite a number of surveys trying to find out what the end users were looking for, and they found that most parents nowadays were using a smartphone to access all the info that they needed. And so the app makes a lot of sense. And they really were only looking for a handful of things on the site. They're looking for the attendance, grades, and then calendars, basically, just what's going on. And it was it was really kind of a simple set of items that really need to be included on the app, but it wasn't the app that the parents were using. So we feel like we're headed in the right direction with that.
And it'll be a little more cohesive. Right now, people get a connected email sometimes or a voicemail, and this will all be directed to the app, and it'll kind of be one spot where you're getting all this information, which will make it a little easier for parents, and they don't have, ideally, feel like they have to go to all these different places to find this information, because it's kind of pushed out to them.
One other unsolicited opinion on content. I think it would be helpful and useful to have links to other third-party sources, of information, not just Monomoy, but other things people who are interested in the school system or in a school system might find useful, DESC links or things of that nature. So.
We actually do have a lot.
Yeah, you can see how easily I can find stuff on there.
Right, it's just not organized in a way that's easy to find.
Yeah.
So hopefully, with an improved navigation system, we'll be able to make that clear to people that that information is there for them.
We're really looking forward to it. Anybody else? Last?
Search for school this gives you your kind of Google type.
Yeah.
Right in this thing there.
Yeah.
There you go, results right there. So it's that kind of functionality we're looking for.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, VIPS program.
I guess
Call
I'll
it VIPS,
I guess
or we
I'll
call
go to
it
the
VIP.
podium.
Mr. Carpenter approaches the podium.
So I just want to give you a little presentation of VIPS, which stands for Volunteers in Public Schools, and look back. I think one of the things I appreciated that Sharon's brought up in the past is, let's kind of look back at what we did in Harwich Public and Chatham Public Schools. So I just want to kind of start with a look backwards and then go from there and look forwards to what could we do. So I want to emphasize one thing before I start into this. And, while this is a presentation on how we can enhance volunteerism in our schools, there's a lot of volunteerism that happens at Monomoy regional schools, at each of our schools currently. You can't walk in a building without tripping over a volunteer, it seems, in any one of our buildings when you walk in the door. And it's everything from the Senior Volunteer Corps, which has a number of retirees that come in and support our schools, to the Bridges program, to parents that spend weekends putting on the concession stand at the high school. So, so I want to thank the volunteers that we have already, and then kind of look towards how we can take that and enhance it through a VIPS program. So, within the strategic plan, one of the items that we have in the strategic plan talks about resurrecting a VIPS program within the district to support learning at each model school. And there are 3 action plans, and I would actually say as we get through these, you'll kind of hear how some of our thinking has even changed a little bit from what the initial action steps were as we were thinking about the strategic plan. If we think about it in terms of process, we're researching the history of VIPS within Chatham College schools, and we'll kind of present those findings. Visiting districts with the VIPS program, and we visited Falmouth Public Schools, which has an excellent volunteer public schools program. Look at a team there that included Sherry Armstrong here with us, and Dr. Blanchard and myself, and Principal Burkhead went to kind of get a feel for what they're doing and how that differed from what happened in either of our 2 former school districts. So if we step backwards, when I first landed here in Monomoy, there was a VIPS program and the Chatham, or what was Chatham Public at the time. So at Chatham Elementary, Chatham Middle, and Chatham High School, there was a Volunteers in Public Schools program that I would say was at the time a bit on life support, and I think it was suffering a little bit with the union and coming together of Harwich and Chatham. That merger there, I think, created some haves and have-nots situations that were sort of getting in the way of it sort of vibrantly launching forward. But when the program was in its heyday in Chatham Public Schools, it had a budget. So its last budget was really in FY14. It had a budget of about $5,000. About $2,500 of that budget went to a district coordinator who was stationed at the high school. And then there were 2 building-based coordinators, one for Chatham Middle School and one for Chatham Elementary School, and each of them got a stipend to do some work in supporting volunteerism in their schools. And there was a end of the year thank you luncheon at CBI for the volunteers. The last VIPS coordinator, when I first got here, Susan Whitcomb, who's still with us at the high school here, was the VIPS coordinator for Chatham Public Schools, and I asked her, why wasn't there a high school VIPS coordinator? She said that a high school principal, long in the past, didn't want to have the parents coming in. Figured the high school students wouldn't want their parents coming in and volunteering in the schools, so they decided not to have a VIPS program at the high school. It's kind of interesting because you'll hear when we talk about Harwich's and particularly Falmouth that VIPS in high school, particularly in Falmouth, is quite robust. So it's a different mindset. The VIPS program in Chatham Public, according to Susan Whitcomb, had about 100 volunteers a year came in and helped out in the schools. The positions of these coordinators were last filled in FY14. At the time, there wasn't a comparable program happening in Harwich Public. There were stipends apparently before I landed here that were offered to those in Harwich Public, but they weren't filled. I think as we move forward into the next slide with Harwich, I think there's probably a reason why folks did step up, because we were essentially asking people to do something for less than what someone in Harwich once was asked or once was paid to do. So we had a bit of haves and have-nots where we were honoring volunteers in Chatham during the merger, but not in Harwich, and it was just awkward, we'll say, as in that first year. So Harwich Public. Harwich Public had a Volunteers in Public Schools program called HAVE, which stood for Harwich Association of Volunteers for Education. The HAVE coordinator was a woman, Susan Ricker, who, from what I have seen, did a great job of sort of documenting that program and what had happened. She essentially had a half-time role in the district, so she was paid essentially as a 0.5 FTE. Her job was 19 hours a week. She was paid $23 an hour for the role. The total budget for HAVE was roughly $17,000. That included her stipend, or her salary, I guess not a stipend, but a salary, and then expenses for some breakfasts and other celebrations. If you look back in the archives, she did a presentation to what I presume was at the time the Harwich School Committee, and in 2006 she notes that there were 155 volunteers that year. The volunteers provided 1,040 hours of service to the Harwich Public School System. That equated to 900 hours of service to Harwich Elementary, 110 hours of service to Harwich Middle School, and 30 hours of service to Harwich High School. As I said, she was quite organized in what she did, and I've included in your packets a manual that Susan created at the time, and you'll note that it sort of outlines what volunteers are there to, who's a volunteer, what roles you can have, what the expectations are. So in addition to Corey, there was a little bit of volunteer training that she was doing. What the goals were for the program. The program that Harvard had in place actually had a board of advisors that helped focus the direction for the program. There were roles and responsibilities identified for them, for the volunteers. And you'll notice here just a list of programs that they had. And I don't want to say here, have you think that there weren't programs that were happening in Chatham Public Schools. There were. I just wasn't able to put my hands on a document that shows all the different things that were happening there in a manual, but there's a list of things that are happening. You can go back in and into the this and pick what does America Reads do? What's the purpose of that program? What are the objectives that they want? I think the sad thing here is you look and in 2008 it stops, and it stops because for whatever reason, long before I got here, there were budget cuts, and a decision was made that $16,600 would be best used someplace else, and the position was eliminated. Susan has since gone on, and she teaches at Orleans Elementary School, potentially our loss, and the program ceased to exist. So it was once, I think, a robust program in a direction that I'd really like to see us go. So if we step forward, it would be great to see a VIPS program that we have a board of advisors that looks at the needs that we have within our schools and how we can support learning and come up with a set of programs much like existed in that HAVE manual. One of the other nice things that you can find in artifacts, Tony London, who works in central office, is one of the assistants in central office, has her little lanyard that things are on, and she has many of the volunteer pins that they would produce each year, as sort of bling on her lanyard. Yeah, so there were things each year that the Harwich Have program would give to their volunteers to acknowledge their service. And she also points out that she has also sitting on her desk a little what do you call that, like a small version of a Nantucket type basket that that was decorated, that was given to the volunteers one year. So so it was a nice way of sort of recognizing and thanking volunteerism that happens. So Falmouth Public Schools. So when we took our field trip to Falmouth Public Schools, we met with their director, Tracy Crago, and I cannot thank Tracy enough. It was more than just meeting with Tracy. It was meeting with members of their board. It was meeting with administrators who talked with us about programs that are happening in their schools. Meeting with directors, the director of guidance at the high school, and what the program's bringing to the high school. So it was we got sort of the soup to nuts over several hours of what happens with that program. They put a lot more money into their VIPS program than either of our former districts. The total VIPS budget for Falmouth Public Schools is $176,000. $92,400 of that comes from the Falmouth Public Schools budget. So they partially support the VIPS program from their budget. There's fundraising that happens by the VIPS board and the VIPS community to support the program. And there is some grant winning that also occurs. So the director, there's a full-time director for the program, and there's a full-time clerical support person. Together, their combined salaries were roughly $90,000, which is about 52% of the VIPS total budget. The communication, mailings and things that they're sending out, about 21% of that budget. Programming supplies to run the different programs they have, about 17% of the budget. And then they spend about 10% of their budget to recognize the volunteers that that give time. What does Falmouth get out of that $92,400 that they're putting into it? In 2016, they saw 1,010 volunteers in their schools. Those volunteers provided 44,998 hours of service. 13% of those hours are their students, and there's an expectation within the high school that that the students at the high school will give back to the community as well, and they do a good job of encouraging that, supporting that, and logging those hours as well. The program began in 1982. They stated back then that it was to increase interaction between the schools and their communities. In 1983 is when that program launched with its first volunteers, all 8 of them. And those 8 volunteers started tutoring students at Falmouth High School. And by 2015, they logged their millionth hour of volunteerism in the district. So another way that Falmouth's program differed from either of our other 2 former districts, although I think probably where Harwich was closer to where Falmouth has become. Falmouth ultimately had that VIPS program form its own 501c3, so a nonprofit organization. So it's an organization affiliated with the schools, and I think if we kind of look back at what Harwich had, that program had the capacity to have that association ultimately go form a separate supportive nonprofit organization. So it works in schools for the schools, but it also has its own board and some of its own autonomy there. On that board of advisors is one school committee member. There are volunteers within each one of the schools that serve as liaisons that help connect staff who have requests or needs for volunteers with volunteers who are looking for opportunities to give to the schools, and they also help to support or to track the hours that are going on. There are some key programs that are big enough that they go and pay some stipends to have individuals help support those programs. They pay $27 an hour for these, and those the stipends that they're paying are grant supported. One of those programs is a school-based mentoring program, and it's something that notion of having some school-based mentoring happening here everywhere from the high school all the way down to the elementary schools has been something that initially was talked about in strategic planning conversations that we had here in the library. One of the parents that was at that meeting was suggesting, hey, this would be a really good thing. Can we go and see some mentoring happening with students that are struggling, pair them with someone who can support that learning outside of school. There's a cross-age science teaching where students actually come down and connect with kids at lower grade levels. Also keep in mind that they've done a nice job there by making use of community partners. You have Woods Hole right there, and there's a lot of connection that they've made with Woods Hole, the same way that we could go and make connections with various different entities in the community, including the Marconi Institute in Chatham. The financial literacy program. So we have some of what that financial literacy program is here, and that's what David Alexander put on the Credit for Life Fair. But that's a component of the financial literacy program that volunteers are supporting in Falmouth. And there's a new program that they're launching this year based on a California curriculum called Girls Circle. It's kind of a girl empowerment program that is very research-based. So in Falmouth, the VIPS coordinator salary is only partly funded by the Falmouth budget. It's 80% funded by the school district. 20% of it's coming from the nonprofit foundation, and within that, I guess directors' job expectations is fundraising and also some grant writing to support the total budget for the program. The program has raised over $200,000 in grant funds since 2007, and there's tons of in-kind support that comes from the community, both in terms of materials and services that community partners provide. So when we discussed with them what they felt were sort of the necessary components to really launch a VIPS program well in a district, the one thing that we heard clear from their board is a full-time coordinator. That it's not something that you can simply stipend or even have it just be a part-time coordinator and see the success that they're having. They emphasize the importance of a planning team. To start with that initial team, potentially develops into a board, unlike what the Harwich Have program had. They emphasize start small. You can't just automatically say, okay, we're going to put this in place and you're going to see a program as vibrant as Falmouth. I mean, they started small. It was 8 volunteers, starting to mentor students at the high school or to tutor students in the high school and grew from there. Listen to what the needs are of the staff you have, and be sure to share the successes. One of the things I think that they do very well, and I again, looking back at the historical documents from our own district, I mean, Susan Ricker did a really nice job of documenting the time and hours that volunteers put in, and I think she did a nice job of celebrating that success or that volunteerism, and then identify those key community partners that can connect the school and support students. So this slide's what I call my math. As your superintendent in math at the times nerd. Here we have the Harwich Half program by the numbers. It was a salary that was paid out $16,600, and that's 2008 money. They brought in 155 volunteers. The volunteers averaged 6.7 hours per volunteer for a total of 1,040 volunteer hours that came into the district. Falmouth Public Schools puts a significantly larger amount of money towards a VIPS program, $92,400 towards a VIPS program that's paying for a full-time staff member plus a clerical person. They've realized 1,010 hours this past year, volunteers. Those volunteers are putting in on average 44.5 hours per volunteer for a total of 44,998 hours of volunteerism happening. So, just to kind of break it down here, so Falmouth pays or is paying 5 times what Harwich Public was putting in the VIPS program, but they're realizing over 43 times more volunteer hours, with each volunteer putting in 6.6 times the amount of service. And if you think about this concept of academic mentors, consistency, and having a sustained connection, not just a 1 or 2 hours and done, but a sustained connection is important. And I think that's one of the sort of the magical things that they've managed to put together in this program. So my little slide, sage advice from Warren Buffett. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. And I think if you look at the VIPS math there, they got in value what they put into it. So if we move from strategic plan to FY17 budget, what you'll see as I put forward our next budget is I've asked Katie to put in there a placeholder for a VIPS, a full-time VIPS director for the district. It's really clear after visiting Falmouth's program, to have a successful VIPS program, you need to find the right person. And clearly from our visit there, Falmouth has the right person in place to have that program succeed. If we get the right person in place, that person can then work with a steering committee, and again, start small. Identify the programs that are going to have the most impact on our students. And, there's already, between staff and administrators, there's a lot of ideas out there already percolating. There's a lot of needs already identified. I was in a meeting yesterday at the high school. We were looking at, those students who have dropped out in the past years and having conversations. What could we have done to have prevented a dropout? How could we have better supported that student at high school and before to see them be successful, not to drop out. So I think we have the potential here, but I think we have to make a decision as a school district. How much do we invest, and are we willing to go and sort of take a chance and look towards a full-time director with hopes of seeing and growing the program over the years to see something similar to what Falmouth Public has in place.
Just
I think this is very impressive. I love that they said to start small and careful. My only concern is where the money is going to come from. Is it coming from something are we eliminating something, or we just have this amount of money?
Well, I think if we think about it, we're creating a budget. No. And
I don't think of it that way.
And yeah, so we can put into a budget proposal, a salary for a full-time director. As we go into the budget process, we start next Monday. We have a meeting with the town of Harwich, where the selectmen will be giving some budgetary guidelines for this year and their hopes of what they hope to see when it comes to a total budget increase for the Monomoy Regional Schools. So we're going to have to take that information that we get and guidance from the Chatham Select Board, and then wrestle with what of our wants that we have within a budget can we support and sustain. But I'm just informing you that one of my wants as we go into this budget season is to look towards a full-time VIPS director and start growing a VIPS program. And depending on the news that we hear from our boards in our two towns, we may have to wrestle with many different wants and figure out which are wants, needs, and go from there. It's the annual budget process.
Ms. Long?
Clarify, is this FY 18?
Oh, sorry, FY 19.
FY
18, sorry.
18, perfect. The second is, you had, I like Mrs. Stout, find it interesting, they like start small and build carefully, but they put that as number 3, but number 1 to kind of hire a full-time coordinator, paid by district, or at least in part, the number 1, which was interesting to me, because to me that doesn't necessarily mean starting small. So my question to you would be, you had said that in Falmouth they started with 8 volunteers. Was that with 2 full-time employees?
So I talked to them about, I think initially it was just volunteers, I think no director. It was essentially where we are now. And then I think they had a fractional director, then they had a full-time director. They had, at some point, they decided we needed to add clerical support. It's shifted in and out of the Falmouth budget, depending on the year and how much the school district can support it or not. It's kind of shifted, where the salaries has come from. But I think if I recall correctly in the presentation, I think Falmouth Public has tried to carry more and more of that. They've put an emphasis of carrying more of that salary on their end rather than have it be on the nonprofit end.
Ms. Ryder?
I have a question, and it's really a follow-on to what Sharon was asking, because this says the fiscal year 17 budget, so we are or are not?
18.
It should be 18.
Okay, so it's not being fiscal year 17, which
That's the year we're in.
I know that. I'm just making sure. Thank you.
Mr. Russell?
On that same note, in a couple of months we mentioned this, and maybe we're clear, I'm talking about the strategic plan, and it runs through all of the goals that have been established and agreed upon and the steps taken. We mentioned, would it be possible, and maybe it's already been done, and Katie would probably be the prime person, is to scan with the superintendent all those action steps and get a guesstimate of, for example, math and focus, whatever it cost us, $250,000 less, $50,000 training, whatever it might be, and begin to put a figure, and I mentioned this a couple of months ago, into all of those goals / action steps. And now this one here on page, whatever it is, would have X amount for a director and supplies. And it allow us to have that in X number of weeks from now to say like, that's not bad. As a growth program for a year from now, we're looking at just that. Or we're looking at $180,000 because of 7 other goals that require support. I think that'd help me at least to be able to see what the whole 7 or 8 pages of the strategic plan speaks to financially.
Ms. Richardson?
I had a question about the role of the coordinator. Does that person also train the volunteers, or who would train volunteers?
The answer is, the way it was in Harwich, yes, and Falmouth has a sort of a training, whole training regime that they go through. So yeah, that's one of the roles. So the staffing that they have is taking care of, quarrying, training, making sure that their volunteers have volunteer badges, that they're, just making sure that they're pairing the right type of volunteer with the student or staff need.
I was just wondering if they're tutoring a subject matter, who trains them, or how do they work that?
Well, I think that's where, I think, again, some of the advantages of that full-time coordinator is they're going out to the newcomers groups in town and the Rotary groups and, the Harwich Men's Group and this, so they're connecting with a lot of different groups and bringing a lot of diverse talents in, and then, so if the academic support center here at the high school says, we really need some math tutors, this director's keeping her ear open for, okay, who's capable of doing, trigonometry and calculus, and or maybe it's math that, that may be below algebra, but somebody has that proficiency and they're reaching out to a retired math teacher to, at the elementary level to say, hey, come on in, why don't you go tutor math here?
Mr. Duvall?
Obviously, this would be a very positive effort for our school system. If we decide that this is something we want to move forward with, is there a mechanism that we can start grant writing now, this year, to help defray some of the costs that we will see next year?
I think possibly. I think the challenge is I don't know that a grant's going to cover personnel costs.
I'm not looking for it to cover everything, but to augment. If we find money in our budget, it obviously will need to be augmented to round out the whole program. So it would behoove us to start that process even before it's totally decided.
Ms. Roder?
2 comments. First, excellent suggestion, thank you. And I also wanted to say thank you for Dr. Miller, who has in the past 2 or 3 Chatham Elementary School scoops put out a call for volunteer talent so they can create a talent bank. So she's been very proactive to start this process already for the elementary school. I just want to say thanks.
Anybody else? Sounds good. We'll see what happens. We'll put it on, as you say, a list of wants and see what we can prioritize, get the towns to support. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the regional agreement. Before we get to that, let's hear about the construction closeout.
Or lack thereof. We were so hoping that there would be a construction or a building committee meeting 5 o'clock today, and we would be closing out the project because the HVAC contractors have put in these sensors that should shut the units into a protective mode, so they close the dampers, and if
if it gets too cold inside the unit where pipes might freeze in it, they would close the dampers and start continuously running hot water through the coils to protect them. The challenge is that a programming snafu has happened, and our units keep going into protective mode randomly, so that just yesterday, 4 different units went into a protective mode, and I don't think it got down to 38 degrees, but the sensor was sensing what it thought was 38 degrees inside the cabinet. So clearly there are things that the HVAC contractor needs to resolve before we're going to close out the contract and pay all the parties. So the saga continues. We're hoping that by December 1st is when we've postponed our meeting until, and we're hoping that by December 1st this is all resolved. We met as a building committee steering group to do sort of a preliminary rating of the architect, the general contractor, and the subcontractors on the job. These are sort of report cards that building committees give to ultimately the state building authority. So we've kind of done our preliminary rankings, and we'll share that at the next building committee meeting, which hopefully will be ready for a closeout. So, yes.
Your choice of the phrase snafu seems particularly appropriate. I'm sure everybody here knows what the initials snafu stand for, and I'm leaning on the situation. This has been such a problem for so long. One of the words is normal, and this has become a normal problem for us. So I think unbelievable that we're still having this problem this many months after the introduction of the. I did point out for the record that we're not freezing in here tonight.
Well, yeah,
so that's a step up.
Except for Karen. If the unit does go into a protective mode, it'll run hot water, but it will not pump any hot air into the space while that's happening.
Well, I think we can handle that ourselves. Mr. Russell.
Nothing is ever perfect, and it is a source of frustration. However, as of this morning when we were reviewing the evaluations of all of these subcontractors, as well as Mount Vernon, the architect, and Fontaine, the contractors, other than this one issue, which is a key issue, the HVCs and the particular subcontractor responsible, the grading level of almost every one of the other subcontractors was between 94 and 100. So at least we don't have at the moment multiple subcontracts that need to be argued out. So there's one significant connect needs to be worked on and repaired for our confidence. So in that regard, a great deal, most of this is behind us.
We'll keep our fingers crossed. Thank you. Next item I'd like to deal with is the school committee goals for 2016-2017. We've been working on school committee goals for this year at our previous meetings and at our workshops. And I think everyone, you may or may not have it with you, being on the agenda, we all had received what Nancy was good enough to put together for us with a detailed list of not only what we had at this point tentatively agreed would be our goals for the year, but also some particular action steps with some particular dates. So it's open for discussion. It's also hopefully open for as an action item to approve our goals. Does anybody have any comments about the proposed school committee goals? Mr. Russell.
To begin the discussion, I'd make the motion that we approve the 2017 school committee goals as discussed and written, that stated 4 major goals with action steps.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Stowe. Before we, just for a moment, let's just for the sake of people wondering what we're talking about, I'm just going to read the headline, the titles, the 4 goals that we've been discussing so far are the review the Monomoy Regional Agreement, complete the Mass School Committee Association self-evaluation. That's number 2. Third one is to participate and complete the Mass District Governance Program, and the 4th one is to seek input from interested stakeholders.
I would like to amend that or to add another goal, and that is to support the development and implementation of a pre-K-12 social emotional curriculum in accordance with DESE guidelines.
Okay. That's a motion to amend the motion that's already been made. Is there a second on Sharon's motion to amend?
Second.
Also, this is something we've also talked about in our workshop. We've talked about the fact that this is, what Sharon is proposing is something that's part of our strategic plan, which we've already approved. Do you want to speak any more about that topic, Sharon?
Yes, just very briefly, because we have talked about this. This is part of the strategic plan, but also 3 of us, Donna, myself, and Karen went to, and also Scott, went to the Massachusetts Annual School Committee Superintendent meeting in Hyannis that's held, I think it was last week, every year this time. And the theme of it statewide was this, social emotional learning. So I think it's an important thing statewide, and it would be just to support them.
So your motion includes a title and a brief description. No further, you don't have any specific details or action steps or timelines as part of your proposal?
Not at this point, no. I think that the administration is doing that. So it looks like it's already on the calendar that Donna's proposed.
Any further discussion? I'll listen. Ms. Ryder.
Just that you stated that it's on the strategic plan, but I think the wording in the strategic plan is different. It seems, if I'm not mistaken, maybe you have it, Donna, you seem very familiar with the strategic plan, and I'm not as much, but the wording, I think, was a little different. It was a little more vague. It didn't state that there would be a curriculum specifically. Do you remember by any chance? Does anyone else?
Sharon.
This is exactly what I said for the strategic plan. It's exactly what was approved, but it wasn't exactly what came out in writing afterwards.
Any further comments, discussion? All those in favor of Sharon's motion to amend the school committee goals to add the goal that she stated? That's 2. Any opposed?
Nay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. How many opposed? Motion doesn't pass. Any further discussion on the motion made by Mr. Russell? Ms. Scott?
Are we approving just the goals, or are we approving my pre-written action steps?
You have a comment? I was assuming Mr. Russell was making a motion to approve it as laid out in this document. Would that be an accurate statement?
That's correct.
So that would include the action steps and the timeline, the proposed timeline, right, Mr. Russell?
Correct.
Ms. Stout?
That wasn't clear to us when this was put on the agenda, so I'm prepared to approve the goals as stated, but I haven't, I would have looked at those if I had known that was coming up tonight.
Well, this was a document that we've had for a couple of weeks now, and it was on the agenda to approve the goals.
The goals.
So
I'm ready to
this
approve
is
the goals.
the goals. So you're not prepared to vote in support of it with the time. I mean, the motion is, Mr. Russell's clarified based on Scott's question that his motion includes the action steps and the timeline. So you're not going to vote in favor of that.
Well, I just haven't had a chance to look at it. I'm not saying I wouldn't be in favor. It's just that on the agenda, it's stated goals and we had spoken about these goals, and Nancy said before, for us to discount that and just look at the goals. And so that's what I looked at when she presented them. So we never discussed the timelines.
Ms. Scott?
When I mentioned that, that was at the workshop.
That's right.
When we were trying to approve the goals at the workshop, and I had just presented it and given it to everybody. So it was I wasn't comfortable at that time to let everybody have a chance to look at what I had written. That was at that workshop 3 weeks ago. About
Mr. Russell?
Just as a suggestion, to try to simplify it, I think the action steps and the 4 goals that we discussed, including the action steps, they're part of that body. If, in fact, we vote to affirm that, there is nothing to state that a week from now or a month from now, there could be an elimination of an action step based on more information or in addition to a new action step. So I think we've provided enough information to accept the goals that have attached action steps with them now, with the understanding that very likely there could be an addition to a next step to improve the goal.
If I'm not mistaken, actually, this was the result of 2 workshops. We had a previous workshop in which we discussed the goals and discussed action steps, and then at the last workshop, this was presented to us, which was actually 2 or 3 weeks ago, exactly in this form. So there has been a significant amount of time to consider this. Ms. Stout?
But we never discussed the action steps. They were presented in writing. There was no discussion of them, and it wasn't clear. But, you know, everyone can vote their way.
Sure. Ms. Ryder?
Just to say that that was the memory that I had as well. The action steps were presented, but we did not discuss them.
Is there anybody that, I mean, we have had this document for a few weeks now, so we've had an opportunity, if someone had a particular concern about any of the action steps or any of the proposed schedules, does anybody have any that they currently want to state? I don't want to, everybody should have a chance to speak if there's something about the particular proposal that they don't like. Any further comments? Motion is to approve it as prepared in the document produced by Nancy Scott with the action steps and the timeline. All those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? One and one abstention. Ms. Ryder? The motion passes. Thank you. The reason I stepped back from the regional agreement discussion was I wanted us to approve the fact that we're going to be having the regional agreement as a goal before discussing setting up how we're going to do it. So I'd like to move back on the agenda to the agenda item of the regional agreement. We've had a number of discussions about this at our meetings over the last couple of months since the year started. Just to remind everybody, we're obligated by the regional agreement to have a review essentially this year as the 5th year of the regional agreements being in place. I want to point out that in the way the goal was set up by Ms. Scott, in particular under the regional agreement, it provides for particular action steps, which I particularly focused on over the last couple of weeks because they strike me as particularly helpful given the need to get this accomplished in time, to get input from the 2 towns, and also to be able to get it finished soon enough to appear on each of the town meeting warrants, because as you'll all recall, any amendments to the regional agreement have to be approved by town meeting of both towns. So speaking personally, I think that the action steps proposed by Nancy, by Ms. Scott in her goal statement, and I would point out that the first action step is listed as committee workshop to discuss revisions, additions, and changes to the regional agreement during November of 2016. So I would like to propose that we come up with a workshop meeting, a date this month, in light of the need to get this thing accomplished as soon as we can. I was thinking perhaps I'd be obviously open to suggestion about this, but one of the thoughts I had was that we might, we set it up as a workshop but also perhaps consider inviting representatives from the two towns, select boards, in hopes that they have been made aware of this, and perhaps they would have some input at that time, or at least take part in our discussion. Does anybody see a problem with inviting them to that? Ms. Ryder?
I think we should.
Sounds good. Any thoughts on when? Now that everybody's quickly grabbing their smartphones, calendars, laptops. And, pardon?
Sorry, I was suggesting.
We also, did you get everybody's packet? I had asked, in an email, I'd asked Barbara to prepare a calendar which incorporates the town's deadlines for certain things as well as our meeting dates. So it might be valuable to have that in front of you as you're considering a date. The only thing we have scheduled for this month, I would point out, first of all, that the meeting with the Harwood Selectmen on Monday, my impression from Mr. Carpenter is that's more of us listening to them than us providing information to them. So it's not essential, I think, that members of the committee, obviously you're welcome, but I don't think it's essential that we attend. And the only other meeting we have scheduled for this month is for a week from tonight. So that leaves a couple other weeks. Yeah, we have meetings back to back. Oh, I'm sorry, that was the December meeting when we had back to back. Excuse me. Point being that we don't have anything else scheduled for this month. Does anybody want to propose a date? Sharon, you often have difficulties because of your work schedule. Is there a date? Let's start with you.
There's a concert on the 17th this year they're trying to get everybody to call Child's Play, I believe. And it looks like we have a school committee meeting the first, and maybe prior to that school committee meeting.
The only problem is there's possibly going to be a subcommittee meeting prior to that meeting, a finance subcommittee meeting prior to that meeting. So that night, December 1st, is fairly booked. We'd really like to try to squeeze this in November if we can. Far enough from now so that we can give enough notice to the selectmen, but still within the month if possible. How about the last week? How about sometime early in the last week of November? Does anybody? Again, I'll turn to you, Sharon, because you do a lot of evening work.
Thanksgiving open.
What's for dinner?
You cook, we'll be there.
I'm all booked already except the 15th.
You said there's something on the 17th.
Well, I haven't bought my ticket yet, but there's a concert here called Child's Play that they're trying to get people to go to for the Cranberry Festival. It supports the Cranberry Festival and it supports scholarships for our kids that are graduating. That's the only thing. I don't know when it starts. How long would the meeting be?
I don't think this will take very long. I really don't. I don't think it'll take as long as some of our other workshops. We already have, we've already received a packet from the administration with some suggestions for changes to the regional agreement, which things that might be eliminated as being irrelevant now that we're a region, and also some comments. We've had some discussions at this meeting about some concerns that I've had with things that need to be reviewed in the regional agreement. So I'm not sure that we'll end up with anybody showing up with much new. So I think it'll be kind of gathering together the thoughts that we've already had.
Maybe we could do something like 6:15, and if somebody's going to the concert, they could
What time is the concert?
I don't know. I don't know. But it wouldn't be before 7. I'm not sure.
Is the concert here?
Yes, it's in this building.
Could we? Is everybody generally, was that the 17th, right? That people generally available? Maybe we meet a little earlier than that, maybe 6 o'clock?
On what date again?
17th?
Next Thursday.
We'll all be having breakfast together that morning, so.
My client leaves at 6, so I could get here by 6:15.
And I'll presume that
That's the day our district review ends, so I'll presume that they're all gone by then, and I'm free.
That's not the night that's not the date that we meet with them, right?
I think
Well, it's the night before.
That's
the day
Wednesday, the
before.
16th.
Day before
The
that.
day before.
Well, we'd want to have less than 2 meetings that week. Any other thoughts or concerns? Nobody said anything bad about the 17th at 6 o'clock.
But if we're all here on the 16th from 4:30 to 5:30, we could meet, you're not here at 4:30 to 5:30?
I can only stay till 5:15 when I pick my son. But that's it. Sorry.
Thursday's fine for me.
17th, 6 o'clock?
Yep.
Okay.
The concert's at 7.
Okay,
We'll
if
talk
that should
fast.
be enough time, I guess.
It's in the building, so we'll know how far to go. Thank you for that.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Russell?
would it be our understanding you to attempt to invite the select boards from both groups for that day?
Yeah.
Assuming it's just as much difficulty we have to agree on the date, they may be tied up.
No?
Assuming, let's assume that they can't come, would we be moving ourselves to that meeting? I guess what I'm saying, absent their ability to come, I would recommend we meet anyways.
I would like to meet regardless of their availability myself, because I think we have a fairly tight schedule to get this done. Mr. Kaepernick?
There's been a request that we engage legal counsel to have them give us or the boards a primer. Should I be looking at seeing if legal counsel can come and give all 3 boards a primer then, or wait till a subsequent meeting?
Well, how about we wait and see what the availability is of the 2 select boards, if we can find out
Yeah.
quickly,
Yeah.
and then answer that.
Yeah, I can see the advantage both ways. I mean, one of the issues that might come up is whether some idea that we have about a change, of course, is legal. But maybe just as importantly, I was hoping that maybe that the council that would be there to counsel us might also have had some experience with regional agreements from other districts. I'm assuming that when the regional agreement that we have was put together, I know Ed Lennox was very much involved in that. I know he's retired now, but I would imagine he brought a great deal of information about what other districts had done. And I think that would be very useful. I mean, none of us, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think any of us was involved in the drafting of the regional agreement, so, were you?
Yes.
So I don't have any materials, or maybe you have some about other regional agreements that were compared. It would be nice to have that information, so perhaps, in light of the fact that there's somewhat of a time constraint, maybe we should go ahead and meet, and maybe not with counsel. Because I agree, it would be good to have the attorney when we also have the select board people. Mr. Russell?
And I appreciate the timing, but I didn't realize we had the opportunity for a primer for the council on this. To me, that would be the first thing I'd want to be able to do, to have someone come who's from our law firm to give us a half hour, 40 minutes of an up speed on just what we have lived under and what's the potential before we move, even with ourselves, and come up with some ideas that we'd like to change, and then have to reverse a step. I don't know how this fits on getting the schedule, but I really think it's important if that's part of the process.
Maybe between us tonight all being here, we could pick 2 dates, and then it would be an opportunity to have the selectmen tell us which of those dates is easier for them to attend, and then we could ask the council attorney to be here that night. Ms. Ryder was it.
I was just going to say that it might make sense if we are just generally putting forth suggestions to not delay the process and wait for an attorney, but, just have a listing. We're not finalizing it. We're just bringing forth suggestions or areas of clarification or things to strike from what's on there. It doesn't apply anymore. It seems pretty early in the process.
Ms. Scott Bell?
I was just a little confused because it sounded like we were going to ask for representatives or any selectmen who could come. But now it seems as though we're trying to work it around.
Well, we're trying to maximize our efficiency. I mean, if we could have a meeting in which we have ourselves, representatives from the selectmen, and also legal counsel,
Sure.
and that would be,
Sure. Sure. Are you seeing this as multi-step?
definitely,
Okay.
you know. I don't know to the extent the selectmen have even considered it, Mr. Carpenter.
I just want to just put out there, that was a request by one of the select board said that we reach out to council and have somebody help give us a primer at some point early on in the process. That's why I was putting that on the table.
Yeah, that makes total sense. We need to do it
17th is
legally.
soon. It's long.
I was just gonna say that it might make sense to do something on the 16th after that meeting that we're all here for, and just do a legal piece and then follow the next night into the 17th to discuss a regional agreement with what's fresh on our minds from the legal team on the 16th.
Ms. Ryder's not available
Oh,
on the 16th. That's the only problem with the 16th. Mr. Carpenter.
I just also don't know that the lawyer would be available next week.
That's short notice for everybody. So, I mean, back to you, Mr. Russell, I mean, it's certainly a valid argument that the only people that we know we can get there for the 17th at this point are ourselves.
You know, the follow-up here is I piggyback on that thought. I don't know if it would even be wiser if we as a committee as a whole, absent 10 selectmen, even potentially if they were able to come, rather than joint meet with 20 less. I would think it would be worthwhile for the 8 of us to meet to discuss our ideas and get familiar with the governing document before we had a larger group of people who are invested in it also. To me, that makes probably, in thinking about it, the ideal to me would be an attorney and the 8 of us, and then take the next step.
Well, perhaps we'll keep it on the 17th, and if we can have council present, we will, and if not, we'll spend less time.
Yep.
But still meet. You know, there might be in this, speaking of Google, I mean, we might be able to find some other examples of regional agreements, you know, between now and then.
a lot of
Ms.
really
Scott's
old-
volunteering to do that. I can see her over there just
She already has.
raising her hand.
There's a lot of really old regional agreements
Yeah,
that I don't
that's
think
true.
follow the 5-year rule.
That's true. We're pretty much the most recent regional agreement, right?
That would be the case.
Shirley Air, I'm advised, was just before us. Maybe. I wonder if they
Air
have a
Shirley.
superintendent they could be contacted. I bet they do. Okay, so we'll shoot for the 16th at 17th at 6 o'clock, not 16th at 7 o'clock. And,
Say that all,
I got you
say it right.
backwards now. 6 o'clock on the 17th, here. Okay. Anything further to beat that to death? Okay, thank you. School committee goals. We also, on our agenda for reports and discussions, is scheduling a review of the strategic goals status. As you all are aware, Mr. Richardson put a great deal of effort together and provided everybody with an outline for a review of the strategic plan and to get reports from various persons to tell us how we're doing with that strategic plan. Anybody, I don't remember seeing any emails. Did you receive any?
I did not.
Okay. Does anybody have any thoughts or concerns about that? Has everybody taken a look at it? It sounds good to everybody? Ms. Ryder?
I did send an email to Donna saying, thank you, it looks great.
I stand corrected.
No, I mean, you did a lot of work, and it was appreciated, and it looked great to me.
Thank you.
So we'll go with it then, right? Then, you know, we'll adjust it perhaps as we go along. I'm not sure whether we want to, what we want to do to make it more specific, you know, as time goes on. Maybe Mr. Richardson and I can continue to work towards dates.
Just
for
as
certain
long as
things.
the people are notified in December that
Right.
they need to present or whatever.
Right. Mr. Carpenter, you've had a chance to look at it. And did you get any feedback from anybody?
We haven't sat down as a team, but I think it makes sense, and I know that Carla has a parallel document that she created on her own, too, so.
Maybe we can merge them in some way. Right, any further discussion on that?
Just to
Mr.
follow up,
Russell?
if the folks are going to report with a 10 or 5 or 20-minute overview as to how that particular goal is counted, I wonder if we could ask them, they're so skilled in PowerPoint, I wonder if they could provide us with a 1-page or a half a page as the high point bullets of how's it gone the first 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, as opposed to however else they report. So some type of sheet of paper that we could attach to our strategic plan and say, I can recall this. So.
Great idea. Anything else? Thank you. The subcommittee reports. Are there any subcommittees? Essentially, had some reports at this point. Superintendent's report. Anything further, Mr. Carpenter?
Not much, just a reminder, the district review starts 7:30 Monday morning, and it's, I think it's actually a good process to go through. I think it's a chance for us to reflect on how we're doing as a district and for an outside team to go and give us some feedback, so I look forward to it. Although it does mean that a lot of other things kind of grind to a bit of a halt for 4 days, but I think it will be an informative process, much the same way that when you have a NEASC visiting team coming to go and review how the high school's doing and give you some feedback. Feedback's good, and I think I look forward to the report that ultimately comes out of it to look and see how we can grow as a district and what's going well and what's our areas for growth. I did appreciate going to the conference last week, and I was sharing some of the things. There was a presentation that Sharon and I went to by a group, a company called Pandora that I thought did a nice job of how they measured social and emotional learning, and I had shared that with Carl and Melissa as this might be a tool for us to go and look into as a district, and was telling Carla and Principal Wilson about the niceties on that. They had a free beginning of school year type survey that kids take and the teacher takes. So within the first couple minutes of class, suddenly you kind of see who you have connections with and what connections you have with your teacher. Just you sort of start from this place of connectedness, and I think those things matter, and I appreciate Sharon's pushing for that social emotional piece. I've asked Melissa McGuire, who will be back and rehabbed and back with us here with her knee that has been bothering her, but she'll be back in next week and here for the district review. I've had her looking into a type of social emotional thing that there was an article that I think Joanna sent out to some people on a program called Preventure that it was an article from the New York Times that looked at a type of drug prevention program that has been effective in Canada and Australia and the United Kingdom, and we've been looking into, is there a way we can get connected with that program, that research, so Melissa might be able to get a little feedback on some of the progress that we've made on forming a Preventure connection.
So that's available in Canada?
It is. You don't say.
I'll be heading up there soon, so perhaps I can
Check that.
On the same topic, Matt,
please.
could you fill us in on the results of your meeting or meetings with Sheila House as far as some grant money that would be used in our schools and how it will be used?
So, well, at the moment, I think that's a potential program to look at for it. So, one of the, we've had one meeting with Sheila where we have kind of discussed the grant. The purpose of the grant is sort of an anti-addiction. There's $15,000 out there, but there's also additional grant monies that are available to look at how we can support students students not, becoming addicts down the road, while also looking at what programs can support that and also have other benefits. Many of the programs that help an addiction also help prevent suicides or help prevent anxiety or depression. So, we've had sort of a preliminary conversation, and Preventure is one of many that they're looking at.
Could you give us some names of some of the other ones that you talked about?
Let's, at the moment, Sheila's researching things and Melissa's researching things.
Mr. Russell, I think you...
I was remiss, after being asked by the chair to be the representative of the Cape Cod Collaborative.
Subcommittee report.
Subcommittee report, I was waiting, it just passed me by. So if you would...
Please.
This is really for my own benefit, maybe our new members, much of which, the only meeting I attended was last night. They were very informative. The program, as most of you know, it's housed in town of Barnstable in the village of Austin, the former Austin Elementary School. It was a summary meeting, but what I could gather, at least for the listening audience as well as the new folks here, there are two significant programs. One housed in the Austin Elementary School with an approximate population of about 50 students, and they are severe, starting at the kindergarten, first grade, up through and out of elementary school, both emotionally as well as physically severe students. The tuition is paid for via all of the sending schools, which would be the 14 and 15 Cape Cod districts. The second program is housed on the outer space in a former Bourne Elementary School, and that's more middle school and high school for behavioral needs students, and they're through a core team meeting and parent approval assigned there for a period of at least a quarter, if not the entire year. That too is funded. The other extreme of that, which I didn't realize, for those students who have some advancement through the effort of, I think it was our former superintendent here, Joe Gilbert, as well as the collaborative director, they have created what has been in place for several years, housed at Mass Maritime, a leadership middle school program, in, again, proportionate to the population of our districts. Youngsters are invited through a process of the high school and teacher identification, and they represent maybe 10 or 15% of the high achieving students, and they are invited to spend 3 weeks at a summer Mass Maritime STEM program, most of which are full-time teachers, and then maritime cadets are the secondary teachers. And it's a curriculum-based, but also a lot of leadership, community building programs, and I guess it has been just a successful piece of work Cape-wide. There's a similar model at Stonyhill College, and I believe at Bridgewater State University also. So we have had several students from our now new Monomoy Middle School go, and just had rave reviews from their parents. So that was meeting one. They fed us, and more to come. So thank you, Brian.
Thank you for that. That's an incredible organization that provides a lot of great services to the children in this district, including some people from Monomoy. So I appreciate you being involved in that. Ms. Ryder.
Considering we only had one meeting this month, I guess that's why we haven't received a monthly financial report. So I was wondering if you would be receiving it on the 1st or the 8th next month.
Is there any else that's probably 1st of December?
Also, could we get bank reconciliations monthly?
Okay, was that the end of your report, Mr.
I just have one last thing. On the 1st, I'll have Principal Burkhead come and do a presentation on graduation rates, which I know was in the newspaper. I sent to the committee a graphic that I know Bill will share and kind of explain just sort of what the state released what it calls four-year graduation rates for the class of 2015. So this isn't the students that walked across the stage this June, the previous June. And the state also ultimately releases what it calls five-year graduation rates. So it looks at where what happened to your cohort after 4 years, what happens after 5 years. So we have looked at that and done a sort of a debriefing on all of the students who didn't graduate. The newspaper article sort of shares that I think the bad news looking at graduation rates is that it shared that Monomoy had a graduation rate of 76.9%. There are factors in that Bill can elaborate on that are beyond our control in many ways, and that's if you have students who have intensive special needs and will stay on beyond when the cohort that they're attached to by age. These are students who do not pass an MCAS exam and receive special ed services, usually up to the age of 22. We had, for that cohort, we had the third highest percentage of all of school districts in Massachusetts, the third highest percentage of students still in school. And I argue that the other two school districts, one of which was Boston, the students that are still in school aren't just students that that have special needs. I spent a lot of time yesterday in a meeting with the high school guidance staff and administration, and sort of clarified for them. When we look at this, there's factors we can't change. There are students who have intensive special needs. What we need to focus on are the factors we can change. There are in those numbers in the four-year graduation rate, there were 6 students who dropped out. That we can change. That's what we need to focus on. And those 6 kids, that's not out of the norm for a Cape Cod school district, but it's 6 too many in the four-year graduation number. So we did a debriefing on those 6 plus 2 more. 2 of the still in school group actually are students who didn't have special ed needs and did drop out in the after. So in the 5-year graduation numbers, ultimately there are 8 students who have stories that we need to look at. What can we do differently? Could it have been an academic mentor back in elementary school that we could have helped, and then what supports could we put in place? It was a good conversation, because there are some things that we have already put in place that will help it. One of those that we have ceased to do as a district is we don't take in school choice students after the school year starts, and a theme in some of these is they were school choice students that ran from something, enrolled, and the way it works is if a child enrolls in your school and that's the last place that they are, that counts against you. Some of it also is clear. I mean, these go back before Monomoy. For the class of 2015, half of their high school experience, in some cases more than, were in either Chatham Public or Harwich Public Schools, and there were things that had gone on. In some cases, we'll call it clerical situations. A child leaves the district. I think family that's struggling leaves the district, moves out of state. But if we don't code them right back in 2012, saying that they have moved someplace else, it shows up as a dropout number. And so again, it's trying to make sure that we tighten up our reporting, but more than anything, tighten up what what we can do to help some kids. And there were it was a nice meeting, because there were some really clear things that, that we identified that we can put in place to better support high school students. And I left that conversation with, okay, while the graduation data for 2016, the kids that just walked across the stage, isn't out there, we know exactly who didn't walk across the stage. Those kids have life stories, so let's debrief those. So we'll have another meeting with debriefing those. And then we've already started to create the list of who are the kids that are in greatest need now, and how can we apply the lessons we've learned from the past to support the set of students now. So, as I said, Bill will be able to put a bigger, sort of maybe more in the trenches approach to that. But we do take the data and the numbers seriously. And I think I shared the graphic that I shared with you, and the explanation I shared with you. I also shared with both of our select boards and finance committees, because I had some conversations and questions coming from both towns, just saying, hey, what's with this number? Should we be concerned?
I noticed that both the Cape Cod Times and the Cape Cod Chronicle did a fairly good job of reporting, both the state number and also our explanation for it. Not a great job. In fact, the Cape Cod Times used it in an editorial about how the whole Cape needs to support schools better, and then subsequently put it on a front page story with the explanation. But I'm wondering, is there a summary of some kind that is going to be going out, to all of the parents? I imagine, some people get the paper, some people don't, and I just wonder if it might be worth putting, hopefully a fairly concise summary of the explanation for that and distributing it more widely to the parents. Have we heard much? You said you heard from the selectmen. Have you heard much from parents?
I haven't, and that doesn't mean that we can't more widely share, what we find. And I think that the information that I think, again, I think it's challenging for some people. I had Donna had emailed me some great questions. It's hey, if it's students that have intense special needs, it's a great question. I think it might have been Florence Selden from Chatham, asked, from the Chatham Finance Committee, asked, other districts have these high needs students. How is our percentage different than others? And that's where I was kind of looking at the still in school numbers for the Cape. We were at 14.4%. So that's so taking off the 100% graduate, 14.4% right off the top. We're in the still in school. Barnstable had the next highest grouping, which was 8.4% in that still in school, and Falmouth the next highest for the Cape at 5.9, and then you have a low of Bourne at 1.6. And one of the questions that Donna asked was, well, how about how does that 14.4 compare to past years? And for us, if we look back at Monomoy, the class of 2014, the year before, it was 8.4%. The year before that, it was 8.8%, and the year before that for Harwich High School was 0%. So it's so it does vary, and I think for me, a bit of the frustration would be with the initial article, it was is they said, oh, there was this bump, a significant increase in the percentage of students graduating from one of the Cape school districts, and they're asking the principal, well, what programs have you put in place, or what have you done right? Well, we know we're going to have a bump next year, and
it's not that we put in anything in place, it's just a different, another variable changed, and, so there's fewer students in this group, in that students that would stay on beyond age 18, that there's fewer in that group, that right there, we see an improvement in the graduation rate for 16 step.
So that, I was going to be asking about that. So it looks like we're going to have a much different number for this next time. And when does the data come out for this past graduation?
So if I'm correct, the way the state is releasing the numbers is they just released the numbers for, so when the Kickout Times was putting this out, they had just sort of published 15s. So 16s get released roughly September or so of next year. But we know who didn't walk across the stage, and we know who's still here in our school, and we also know, which kids dropped out. And as I said, my expectation is that we're going to do a debriefing on what's the reason, what can we do to address the variables that we can change.
Mr. Richardson?
Yeah, could I just say something? I'm appreciative of having this information out and about, because I have been asked about what's happening, just based on the newspaper, the way it comes across. So to talk about it and to see what we can do about it is what it's all about, and I'm just glad to have that information.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Russell?
It'd be interesting to know if some of those youngsters who attend for a fifth year to graduate are school choiced into our district based on excellent programs. Take, for example, if parents out of district perceive that our special ed program is well above the norm, that would be the good news. So if there are 14, well, I don't know the numbers, so I won't, but that could be the service we're giving is reflective not on how well we're doing, but in fact, because some students who are needy are staying on to age 18 or 19 or 20, and they come from another district.
What I sent to our select boards is I sent the graphic that you all have received, and actually said, I know this seems like bad news, but there's actually very much good news here. So 5 of the students in this still in school category were students who struggled with the MCAS. But we got them to pass an MCAS. These are kids that, had we not gotten them to pass the MCAS, despite whatever learning challenges they have, they would have gotten a diploma. They would have ended up on the dropout range at the end of this. So there's a set of students who stayed, were here for a fifth year, and it was a success, because while I would hope most of our students graduate in 5 years, I hope more than anything for all of our students that they're able to get that diploma. And if it's 6 years, if it's 5 years, it's 6 years, or whatever, it's a success story. So there's some great successes there. I think too, the question that you asked, when we did actually look at the numbers, there is a large portion of what is in that still in school number that don't have Chatham or Harwich zip codes, and it speaks to what's good about our system. There are families that have sought out Monomoy because of how we've been able to support all students, and the programs that we have in place. We have programs in place at our elementary schools, but also we have districts that look towards our middle school and high school programs that we have, but those students end up choicing in. The school district gets more than $5,000 for those students. We get that plus the cost to provide the special ed services for them, and a mathematical challenge for the district is when you have a large number of students who come to you with special needs. You do end up having some students who will stay on with you potentially to age 22 that
that count against a four-year graduation rate number.
Anything else? Mr. Carpenter, you're set. Do we have any reason for a executive session this evening?
We do have we can be hopefully fairly brief, but we do have negotiations that are starting up with one of our bargaining units and need to get the pulse of the committee.
Well, before we do that, I think it might be appropriate for us to thank the voters of the towns of Harwich and Chatham for supporting our position with regard to question 2. The numbers came out in the way that we had hoped they would for the 2 towns, so thank you very much for the people who voted no on question 2 as a result of, hopefully as a result of what we told them about it. Anything further during our public meeting anybody wants to bring up? Then I will recognize somebody to make a motion to go into executive session.
So move.
Is there a
Second.
Doing it. Ms. Richardson? Yeah.
Yes, I, what was it? Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Ms. Stout?
Yes.
Aye. Aye.
Mr. Russell, Ms. Long? Mr. Ryder? And I vote aye. We will now go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21, discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, and we will not be coming back into a regular session. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Too late.